My name is Isabelle Tabet. I am a theater design and production major, a senior here at UMBC, and I'm with Professor Susan McCully. Susan, you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Susan McCully. I'm a professor here at UMBC. I teach playwriting, and my new play, All She Must Possess, is premiering right now at Rep Stage in Columbia, Maryland.
Awesome. So, tell me a little bit about the trajectory for this project. From the kernel of idea to your story about Etta and her sister Clarabelle that just opened at Rep Stage, had you been planning to write about the Coen sisters, or was there something more specific that brought you to their story?
So I live 2 blocks away from the Baltimore Museum of Art, and I've lived here for 18 years. And from the very first time I went over and saw the Coen collection, I was like, what an amazing couple of women. I was like, and I imagined that there was a play in that. And then, through a series of fabulous coincidences, Joseph Rich at Rep Stage, the artistic director at Rep Stage, was looking for a new play for the Women's Voices Theater Festival. And so he commissioned me to write the play. And once I started really digging into the story of those 2 women, I was like, oh no, this isn't a terribly dramatic story. Like, they're really, really interesting characters, but there wasn't that, when I teach playwriting, I'm like, what's the central conflict that's really going to drive this play? But that turned out to be really a blessing for me. Because I'm really interested in telling Etta's story. Etta was the much more reserved of the 2 sisters. Clarabelle was one of the first women doctors in the country. She was really outgoing. She was really a character. But Etta, there was something about that middle-aged woman who did all of the emotional labor in all of these people's lives. Matisse, for her sister Clarabelle, for Gertrude Stein. She was always the person who enabled other people. And there was something about that story that doesn't get told that I really wanted to tell. And so that's really why I was drawn to Etta, and why the play is really an expressionistic portrait of her.
Great. So I was really struck with the rhythm of the language that I heard from the script at your Circa Talk last spring. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to integrate that into your script?
So I was really interested in the relationship between Etta and Gertrude Stein. And when I tried to write scenes about those 2 characters, I really was drawn to the language of Gertrude Stein and the way that she was doing something very similar with language that Matisse and Picasso were doing with visual imagery, right? So I was trying to kind of, maybe it's a neo-modernist kind of text. I was trying to create my own kind of modernist text. And one thing about Gertrude Stein's language is, like, once you start playing with it, it's like she's one who was being and doing and seeing, and the one who is being and seeing and doing, and it just became it became theatrically compelling. And I also thought it was really seductive. And since one of the things I'm exploring is the intimate friendship between Gertrude Stein and Etta Coen, then the way that language could be very enticing to Etta and also kind of represent what was really fascinating about Gertrude Stein and what was kind of cutting edge, and using that as a kind of theatrical trope in the language. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. Because I love Gertrude Stein, and that's kind of what I was hearing from it myself. So, it's really interesting to hear the backside of that story.
Yeah, I think that is the strongest scene in the play. There's something really compelling about the way that Gertrude uses language. It's very much about a kind of seduction, and yet on the surface the language itself seems to be talking about language. But the way she's talking about language is this way where she is convincing Etta that she's a genius. And there's nothing, I don't think there's anything more compelling than a woman who is confident in her own creation. And I think that that was one of the things that was so seductive for Etta to hear, because Etta is someone who I think really struggled with confidence and with being the person who was out there in the world. And so to be around these people who considered themselves geniuses and were really, really confident in their own genius. And for me, that's one of the things as a female playwright, as a woman of a certain age. When I look at you and I see you're so successful, and I see younger women not maybe struggling with confidence in the way that I did when I was in my 20s or when I was in college. I don't know how I got off on this tangent or what it has to do with my play, but I see Etta as this woman who we just want to see grow, and I hope that the play does that. And that's what
great
I have to say
tangent.
about that.
It's a really
That's
great
my
tangent. So, what then is your favorite line or your favorite part of the play?
So one of my favorite moments is I wanted to historicize and tell some truth that people might not know, historical facts. And Etta Cohn actually typed one of Gertrude Stein's first manuscripts. And so there's this section where Etta says, "Oh, are you sure that I'm good enough? I would love to do this for you, but I'm not the type. I've never been known to be the type." And then Gertrude says, "You'll type for me." This is was one of those places where I really worked on wordplay and a kind of poetry in the text itself. And I'm really proud of moments like that.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great. So, what do you hope contemporary audiences, and maybe specifically those who attend from this region, who are already kind of familiar with the Cohn sisters due to the, art collection that is at the Baltimore Museum of Art, like you said, what do you hope that they'll take away from this play?
I really hope that there's the possibility that we see the retiring older woman as a hero. And in many ways, she's a hero through what she did by taking care of other people, and the way that she collected that art silently over 20 years and filled out an extraordinary collection where you really get to see who Matisse was, because she surrounded him by all the things that influenced him. And so I hope that it's possible to see through language and a visual pastiche that this woman silently did something really extraordinary.
So, we know that theater is always a collaboration, and especially with new works, it can be the most essential part of figuring out. And you and I was actually involved with one of your earliest, workshopping and figuring out who these people were, what the story was in that, and which was a wonderful experience for me, because, I went in thinking, well, I'm not an actress, so, I'm doing these movement exercises, I don't know what I'm doing, but it ended up being very powerful and so exciting to be in there kind of from the beginning. So, how involved were you in staging the play once you had written it, it went to rep stage, and they started working on it? What was the collaborative process there like?
So it's really been a long-term project, working with Joseph and other people. So when we were working on that workshop, it was just trying to imagine if the paintings came alive, how might they speak, how would they move, how would paintings actually become theatrical characters. And so some of the work that you did really informed how the blue nude speaks now in the play. And then we did a series of workshops, and it was really, really a privilege to get to have the same actors sort of develop the roles and read through a series of readings. And Joseph gave me a lot of feedback, the actors gave me a lot of feedback, and they were really central in shaping the script and giving me some courage, because it's not a traditional script, and it's a really expressionistic script that and a lot of times is about poetry and about language and not so much about actions between characters. So the cast and my director, Joseph Rich, have really been important in the process of developing and shaping the script. And then there was a certain point of, a month ago where like, okay, no more changes. This is the script. This is what we're going with. Enough. Basta on the writing. It's now time to embody this script. And I was at almost all of the rehearsals. And that's really a time where the playwright, sits back, and if I had things to say, I would discuss them with Joseph, because the actors don't want to hear 3 or 4 voices. But I had a lot of input into different moments, or, afterwards I say, well, this scene, I really think that we're missing some joy in. And so there's a beautiful soundscape and videoscape, and the lighting, it all tells the story, also very expressionistically. So, yeah, I had a lot of input. Silently, like, Joseph would make a choice, and he'd work through it, and we would see something, and he'd be like, look back, like, what do you think? I'd be like, let's keep that, or I think the music needs to be more upbeat in through this section. And so I'm really privileged that I had a director who considered the playwright part of the production process too, which is something I think that we really teach here at UMBC, is like how the directors and designers actually work in the room as in a collaborative process. And we've done a few of my plays here, and I've been able to be part of that process and to really model that for students, to work on new plays in the professional world, which I hope you have a chance to do.
Absolutely.
Because you have a really, one of the things I really appreciated about you is that you're a really talented designer, but you also have a great dramaturgical mind, so you really understand scripts and close readings and making great interpretive choices. So I hope that you get a chance to do that soon.
Yeah, the wonderful thing about, getting to see, especially because we're so privileged to get to see so many of your scripts over the past couple of years be produced, with Kermore and Voracious, and, I've been involved in those. It really is such a different process when you get to be in the room with the playwright, because, Shakespeare, what do we get to guess what he was thinking when he wrote things? Well, there's a little bit less guessing when you get to have that face-to-face, and, it feels so much more like, the art is living and breathing and changing all the time.
Yeah,
and
you also find out that playwrights sometimes are like, I don't know what I meant by that.
What was that supposed to
be? It's hard.
So, what do you hope will happen with this play after the world premiere at Rep Stage?
I learned so much from this production. Plays are a process, and I feel like now I'm ready to rewrite the play. There are some like particular moments I feel like need some tweaking, but I would actually like to go in and rewrite the end of the play. So I'm hoping to spend some time rewriting the play. And there have been some readings at other places around the country, and I'm hoping maybe it has another life at another regional theater somewhere. So fingers crossed.
And you mentioned that it's part of the Women's Voices, I'm not going to say this right, the Women's Playwrights
Women's
Festival?
Voices Theater Festival.
Festival, there you go.
Yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about that and what the process is with that? Because I don't know too much about the festival myself.
So it's a festival that was instituted by the major regional theaters in DC in 2015, where they were really trying to address the fact that so few of the plays, still only around 20% of the plays produced at regional theaters around the country, are written by women. And they just wanted to do really large-scale professional productions of female playwrights, world premieres of those plays, so that those plays had a place. Like my play now has a place to grow, right? It's like if you only get to do readings, or you're only home in your room writing and you don't get to see your work, it's really hard to grow as an artist. So they were really trying to support female playwrights in getting that first premiere production of their work. And so then that was 2015, where we did my play Kermore. And now 2018, oh my God, it's 2018. So 2018 is the new iteration of that, or the second Women's Voices Theater Festival. And because, there's when you're doing work by people who are relatively marginalized, there's oh, it's Black History Month. Oh, it's like Women's Voices Theater Festival. It's like, do it, give them a month. Give them a festival, and it handled so they really saw the need that it needed to be an ongoing process. And for I've been really privileged to have 2 of my plays done now, and so there's a kind of growth in my my work in the region, and so that's been a really extraordinary project. I'm really grateful to be part of.
That's wonderful. So I've got one last question for you.
Okay.
What advice would you give your younger self, perhaps, when you were around my age, graduating undergrad, the wonderful, tumultuous time that it is to be this age? What would you say?
I would tell my younger self that that life is a paradox, that you have all the time in the world. Don't think that you need to rush to do everything. Really, find your next thing, find your people, work, find the next group of people. You've been in this community that's really supported you, and you have the people that you've worked with here. It's like being in theater means finding your community and working with those people and building relationships and collaborators. But you have all the time in the world to grow as an artist, and have every opportunity be one where you take something away from it. And the other thing that I would tell my younger self is that you are extraordinary, and your voice matters. And that the work that you've done is extraordinary. And I think that it's really easy when you're a young person, and especially if you're a woman, to hear that voice of maybe not good enough, or you could be better, or you need to work harder. And working harder is really important, but what you're doing now and who you're being now is extraordinary, and you deserve to have your work seen. And so when you go send those resumes out for that next thing, girl, just know you are ready. And you're fine just the way you are. That's what I would say to young Susan and to Isabelle in 2018.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been really wonderful.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, so great.